This episode, I'm speaking with Sebastian Key. Sebastian Key just did the impossible, in my opinion. He ran the circumference of a country. Literally, he ran around the whole of Iceland. It's an incredible story, and I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to him about how he prepped for that endeavor, how he accomplished it, and why he wanted to do such an ambitious journey to begin with. If you're into an adventure and running, this is a great podcast for you. I've linked all of Sebastian's socials in the description below. So, let's get into it. Where on earth do you get the idea that you can run around a whole country?
Yeah. So I mean, Iceland actually came first before running around it. And so I've been interested in the country for a while and knew, I've done some cycle touring in the past. I rode John O'Groats to Land's End with a friend, like the length of the UK, which was just a fun trip. And then we had always kind of wanted to do these big cycle tours. And the one that seemed to me to be like the best, most famous, all of these kind of exciting things was Iceland. It's like this country slightly off. It's, kind of no man's landish. There's not a very big population. And so I was like, that would be cool. And, we'd go with tents and cycle the thing. And it's like if you gave yourself 2 weeks to do it, you'd cycle it nicely and, cover like 100 kilometers a day or something, which would be nice cycling. And scenically, it's just insane. And there was something about the unpredictability of the weather and stuff, which I always thought was really exciting. Like I grew up camping, so that kind of sounded really fun. Then I just sort of slowly realized I actually didn't enjoy cycling that much. And I was like, I don't really want to do a trip where every day I'm getting out. Like we finished John O'Groats Land's End bike ride, and I literally could not wait to get off the bike. And I've done a few triathlons since and just always hated the bike part of it. And I cycle around town in London where I live, but that's about the first I like to take it. And so I was like, okay, well, how can we do Iceland? I've been slowly running more and more marathons. Last year did 7 marathons in 7 days and finished that, and was really hoping that I'd finish that and feel completely rinsed and wiped out. And I literally finished that and felt kind of fine. And that I just did with a backpack and completely unsupported. And so finished it, I was like, right, okay, I reckon, I spoke to my mates who are all kind of, we're all very outdoorsy people. I went, guys, I reckon that I can have a crack at something massive now. And, but I want you guys to come with me and support. And I was like, I think we've just got to go to Iceland. Because I was like, I'm not going to, and I looked it up and saw that to what I could find, there was one guy who's run around the ring road, and unbelievable story, like amazing guy. And it took him about a month, just under a month. And he basically did it unsupported, pushing a trolley, like with his stuff in it, which is like wild. But he was running about a marathon a day sort of thing. So I was like, guys, we could go and be fast and like, do it in, less than a month. And so I was like, okay, well, how long could we do it in? And I wanted to go with my mates. So, they all are very good at what they do. Like they are cameraman, one's a physio. So they were like the right team.
Yeah.
So that was lucky that I managed to form. And I just went, well, how long can you get off? How much of your time off work could you give? And they all collectively agreed that they could each do 2 weeks, which meant we had a 16-day window. And I went, okay, well, that equates to just under 100K a day. So that's how we came up with the target.
It's so wild.
So then you were just like, well, if you've got to get back in time for work, I don't want to be out there on my own finishing it. So that's how it all came about.
That's so great. Yeah, what a great fortuitous stroke of luck that you have all these friends that are equipped to help you on this goal, on this wild goal.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like Tommy, who is a friend of another friend who I met doing the 7 marathons, is a physio and like a really high quality, well qualified physio. He's worked on rugby teams for a while, but works in a practice where there are people who are more running specific. And because I knew him well, and he's my age, so starting out, he's like a absolute ball of knowledge. So I was like, perfect. That's the main thing. And then he also, put me in touch with a nutritionist who that was able to be sorted out. Then the others are like genuinely not my best friends, but Chris is a professional cameraman, so that was perfect. Yep. Robbie's incredibly enthusiastic photographer, so that's great. Rory's a downhill mountain biker. I knew I was going to need someone on a support bike. And then George is, he's a project manager and is like the most enthusiastic person in the world. So I was just like, well, he's going to be there doing like the project logistics and everything. And it was all a bit serendipitous. And I was kind of just like chatting to each of them individually. Went, would you want to come? Because it's sort of a weird request to ask someone to do, be like, take 2 weeks holiday to come and support me doing this run. And it will be a lot of work, but it will be awesome and really exciting. And they were all just so enthusiastic, and so that's kind of how it all came together. So there was never really any plan to any of this. It just sort of like came together.
You almost couldn't plan it. It's like so.
Yeah, like I don't have
how it just came together.
I don't have a running coach, and that's always been something which I think's quite fun. So Tommy, I broke my foot in January, whilst we were originally meant to go in June, and whilst training for it, I was running around a park and literally slipped on a pavement whilst Chris was filming me. So they've got the footage of me breaking my foot. So I was looking at the camera and slipped on the pavement, broke my foot. So from January till March was in a boot. And then Tommy rehabbed my foot up to running. And then I went, to be honest, I took some advices from different coaches, but I was like, I don't want anyone to give me a plan, because I just want to, I know that all I need to do is run volume. Like, you know how marathon runners do workouts and then volume, and it's like lots different. I just need for this, there's one thing I need to do, and it was just as many kilometers as possible every week, as well as a bit of strength training, which we did, a lot of as well. But I quite like that we were just sort of like guys figuring it out, and all of the normal anxieties about taking on a challenge, which is like massive, just felt less troublesome, because we were like, we are just kind of making it up as we go along. We are just like guys who are just trying our best, but we don't have any official sponsorships or anything, but that kind of is sort of our vibe, and meant that it was more, I think for our friends as well, it felt really good that we were kind of saying like, we've literally just done this. Like, you don't need to be like some massive sponsored athlete to do crazy stuff, and I think that's kind of nice.
It's that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with friends.
There you go. And I cannot say how many days, we'll get onto the trip in a minute, but the one moment about the guys which best summed it up was there was a moment about day 2, and as I'll tell you, I got injured really early on in the run, but there was a moment in day 2 where we had an uphill marathon. So it was marathon all uphill, and it was so windy, like the wind in Iceland can be nuts. That day was so windy that I couldn't run forwards properly unless the van was driving at about 6 kilometers an hour in front of me. So I was running an uphill marathon right a meter behind a van. So it's not the most fun. The boys were in the back seat, filming from out the window, all tucked up in bed, having a lovely time. But I was getting beaten up out there. Rubbish. Got to the top of this it took me about 6.5 hours to get to the top of this uphill stretch. Shattered, and just let out this huge scream and rest up against the van, really depleted, thinking that the guys who will come over and, feel sorry for me or whatever and wallow in the struggle. And I turned around and 3 of them were literally just having a snowball fight. And I looked, and that was like the most amazing way to really get out of my own head and just be like, oh, we're having a good time. Yeah, this is my challenge. They're all here supporting it, but also like it's fun as well.
Yeah.
So
you're so quick to thank your friends and your team that supported you, and your sister especially. Where do you think, for a challenge like this, where it's kind of you running the whole country, where do you think that generosity of spirit or accomplishment comes from? Like
that's really kind. I don't know. I was so aware that like I've always felt that. So I'm asthmatic as well, and I just never was like good at running or whatever. And I feel so aware that I could only have built up the internal confidence to try and take on something like this, something that no one had ever done, if I didn't feel as though like the people that were supporting me like also had like the most insane belief. And over the last 3 or 4 years when I've been living with these people, that's helped me kind of build up this really solid confidence in what I think of myself as possible to be able to do. And so there were days when we were there when I was so exhausted and like in so much pain and throwing in the towel, that one of the big reasons that I wanted to keep showing up is because they were showing up, and like I wasn't paying these guys, no reason for them to be there other than the fact they wanted to help me do this thing. And I was like, that is insane when you feel so lucky that people are wanting to help you achieve something. And that, I said this, it started off as my goal and it ended as all of our goal. Like everyone just wanted to, everyone was so invested in getting me to the finish line that I genuinely don't think I would have been able to if I hadn't had like that kind of a team. So whilst all their professional knowledges and everything was crucial, just the fact that they knew me, understood me, knew how to kind of make me laugh every day. There was a point where I would have laughed, and that kind of I've never really resonated with them. It works for some people, great, but like the mindset of being like, I'm tougher. You know, David Goggins' mindset of like, I'm tougher than everything. I'm tougher than everyone. You know, stay hard. That doesn't resonate with me well. Because then what resonates with me is always try and have a bit of fun and like see the good in every day and just feel great.
Don't take it so seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a tremendous testament to your character. Every interview I've seen, like there's BBC articles on you. You're like the first thing you're doing is shouting out everyone else.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
dude. And then beyond like the obvious crazy thing I saw you do, there's a reel where you do, I think it's 100K, but on a 400-meter track.
Yeah, that was fun. So the training for this, as I was saying, it's like the training was pretty surreal in that I didn't lay anything out, and every week I was just like, try and run 100 miles. So run about 160 kilometers, and that would be a good foundation. And then do all my strength training, because then it's like if I could consistently do that, then I knew I was going to get injured during this challenge. I knew all that, but I know that my fitness would be there. And so then we kind of were doing that. And then there were a few weekends where we did like trial kind of runs. So one where we ran from London to Brighton, which is about 90 kilometers. And the boys came in the van, so we ran there and then ran back the next day. And that was like our test run. And then the 2 or 3 weeks before we went to Iceland, I knew I had to do a 2 or 3 week taper. But I was just like, I want to do a massive final big run just to really set my head right. Because so much of the time when you've got so much of like the challenge is so big, you worry that you've not trained enough because it's just so insane. And marathon runners get it as well. Like everyone kind of gets this anxiety that you haven't put in enough training. So I was like, right, I want to do something that's one really fast. So I want to run 100K, but I also want to do something which is as mind-numbingly difficult as I can imagine, because then it's like when we go to Iceland, then it will be this beautiful country, and I'll be with my friends, and it will be awesome. So then it would take my mind off it. So I was like, we're going to go to a 400-meter track overnight, so it's completely dark. The boys were able to then pitch a tent in the middle of this track. So then they stayed up all night. Well, they stayed up till about 4 a.m. And I was like, I'm just going to run 100 kilometers in laps of this 400-meter track. We actually ended up doing 256 laps. It took me 14 hours, and I didn't listen to any music, nothing. And we were just like, if I can go around that and not, want to stop or find it so torturous, then we'd be in a good place, and it would kind of really build my confidence. The music one, I got to 2 marathons in and had to start listening to a few songs because I was really tired. But I got to 2 marathons in, and that was good. But it was just it's just a good test. It's just a good test. Like, how far are you willing? Because it's so mindset based, all of this, It's so like, can you just, even when you're rinsed, there was a point where on that laps track where I hadn't brought enough food and was really crashing out. I was like lying on the grass at about 70K. And the only food I had was these wraps. So like just the tortilla wrap, flapjacks, and then like syrup. And I just made a wrap with flapjack and loads of syrup and lay on the grass naked and just sort of ate like 3 of these things, waited 10 minutes to get this spike of sugar back in and set off again. And it was just like, it's such a confidence boost in that you can go to that place in yourself and still want to carry on and stuff. So yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that whole process looked wild to me because I get so bored just running on the treadmill. I get running on a lap for, what'd you say, 800 times or something crazy?
Yeah, well, 250 times. So that's
so wild.
Yeah, it's cool. That's cool.
Okay, on Iceland now. Was it your van, or did you rent one there and equip it?
Yeah, so we had to rent the van because we really wanted to take our own, but we would have had to drive to like Denmark and then take a ferry, and that would have taken like 3 or 4 days. And because we only had the 2 week window, we were like, we'll fly and rent it. So we rented the van, which is great. So we had the van, which was good. So the plan was obviously all 6 of us, 6-man crew, all of us sleeping in the van on the side of the road, so that we didn't have to go to hotels or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we realized we needed a support car because Tommy, the physio, and like all the medical kit, the van was actually going off and having to like recce places, make sure there was always food. And, you know, it's not like there's shops everywhere. So they've got to go on quite substantial drives. So then we need a support car that could be with me the whole time, because we're obvious worries about my legs, but things like the fact I'm asthmatic, and if I had a breathing problem or whatever, they needed to be really there. And then we had the bike. So that was like, and there was always someone, pretty much always someone would be either the car or the bike would be like right with me, which was good.
Is the bike for like pacing or just another support?
It's kind of just an immediate support, because I didn't want to run with a bag.
Right.
Been doing running with a bag for a while, and for whatever reason, it kept causing really bad problems in my like traps across the top of my neck.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And all of the boys are really keen cyclists, especially Roy.
Yeah.
They were like, to be honest, I said, guys, would you mind if someone, and they were all loving it, because they were spending a lot of the time in the van doing editing, doing stuff. So actually then each of them every day would want a section where they would be out on the bike, you know, on the road, and just like actually experiencing the country, which is really cool. So that was the setup. And then also mass shout out to the team, all of them. So ran total distance that I ran was 1,272 kilometers. All of them, other than my physio, but 4 of them, who are none of them are runners, all ran a marathon during that time, because they were all like, right, we've got to do one at some point. But that was like such a cool achievement that most of them didn't train and just ran a marathon at some point. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, I was so proud of them for that. That was really wicked.
What's your emotions like going into day one, like the flight over? How are you feeling?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, because you're very much going thinking, right, a lot of people have invested in this, and you know, I'll speak about my charity in a bit, but I was running this for this charity, Children with Cancer UK. It means a lot to me. My sister had a brain tumor growing up, and it's fine, which is amazing, but I've always really wanted to do something big for this charity. And so that had, and you know, I work at a charity as well, so they were really supportive, really behind me, and that was amazing. And so there's that obvious pressure. There's the nerves about being like, God, because all the stuff I was speaking about earlier about saying you don't need to be a professional athlete or whatever to do cool challenges. All of that cropped up in your head where you go, are you sure? Like, you're taking on something.
Right.
You've got no blueprint for this. There's an article about someone who did it, and now we're trying to beat that by 10 days in a country that's known to be hostile weather-wise, have very little in the way of like, there's like 4 major cities or towns.
Yeah, there's like 12 people, right?
Yeah, there's like very few people on the route. We're planning the map, and it's still a big country, and of hospitals that we're like you can get to, there's like 4 or 5 that are actually like proper hospitals. And so that is obviously then a concern, and I'm worried about whether or not the weather's going to be so horrific. And it turns out we took a gamble on the date, and we said we'll go for this day, 14th of September, as the set off. If we'd gone a week earlier, we wouldn't have been able to do it, because there was a massive storm. And we had some Icelandic friends who helped us, and they said if you'd come the week before, we literally wouldn't have let you go, because it would have been so dangerous. So we took that was a gamble which played in our favor, but obviously that was in my head the whole time. And you just don't know how your body's going to hold up. So I was obviously incredibly excited, but then just so having had so much support and belief this whole time on the flyover and on the day before, that's when you really are just trying to just go through the motions of just getting there. Because then it's just horrible waiting, you know. It's like before you do anything, like before you do things out, the worst part is build up. And it's so true. Because once you're in it, you own it. And you take one problem at a time. And our mentality when we're actually running was just like, do 20 kilometers at a time. Just do 20K, 20K, 20K. And that's how we literally broke it up every day. But before, you are thinking about the whole thing and in its entirety. And it's like, that's fun and nuts. And that's the thing that since completing it as well, I found harder to like compute. That we were doing it 1 half marathon at a time, 4 half marathons a day, and then day by day you get there. Whereas now, and then you look at the whole thing as one piece, and you just go like, whoa, that's insane. So build up was stressful. Because also, you know, because as you say, we're literally a bunch of mates. We didn't know if there was just going to be a gapingly obvious thing that we'd forgotten to do.
Yeah, like forget your running shoes.
Yeah, on that kind of scale of just like foolishness, We would
Yeah.
then walk up and just be like, oh, we're all such idiots. And because it's Iceland again, you just can't get things as readily as you can in other places. Like, it's just not exactly like loads of shops. I mean, the capital city, Reykjavik's got stuff, but then everywhere else is pretty reduced. Yeah. But once we got going, it was great.
And where on the circumference of the island do you begin your journey?
And in Reykjavik, which is the capital, so in like the bottom left corner.
Okay.
Essentially.
Like the southwest part of the country?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Southwest. And we were kind of not sure which way we were going to go around. And then it's quite weather dependent, but basically we were like, because the weather was good, we were able to go north. You head north, because then the first half is essentially, the north side is quite mountainous and like the elevation's quite a lot. So like most days in the first half was about 700 or 800 meters of elevation, which is like quite a lot of elevation for a day. And some of those climbs, you know, it's a main highway, so there were only a few points where there was like properly steep climbs, but they were all just like really slow and long ascents. And over time, actually, funny enough, it became the descents that became worse because my injuries became so severe in my feet that actually the uphills were all right because it was less impactful than the downhills, but the downhills are so painful because you're like, you know, you're pounding your feet a bit more. So we headed north. First day, flying along, having a great time, like crushed out like 94 kilometers, which was like a good day one. And everything seemed fine. There was some wind. It was quite good because we ran the first 50K and it was like really nice weather and nice temperature and everything was quite easy. And I was thinking, God, this is unbelievable. You know, I've been tapering for a while. So I was literally flying out of the blocks, just like absolutely ready to get at it. And then after like lunch, the wind really like came out. And so that was like our first taste of what was coming, because it was like insane headwind on these long stretches of road. And Iceland is not like well covered in the sense that if it's windy, that wind blows across the island quite easily. There's not like huge trees or anything that can get in the way. So you're pretty exposed. And that was when I really was like, oh my gosh, because I sort of we designed these t-shirts that were like the running tops that had the logo on and everything, which looked really cool. And I think I probably ran in just the t-shirt twice. So we really didn't get the, you know, photos of me in the kit that we would have wanted, because I had to be in like 3 layers at all times because it was so cold. And, you know, I've been training through British summer, which was hot this year. And so then like transitioning from that into like constantly running in a coat and a fleece and stuff was funny, but you know, that was just another thing. So yeah, flew out the blocks, had a good day one, but yeah, got hit by the wind. And that was when I was like, okay, gosh, this is going to be interesting. Like just having to tackle this the whole time. But you know, that was quite a fun experience. But then yeah, day one was good. Flew into day two.
And then, sorry, so day one, like you wrap up, I'm sure you're exhausted when you go to bed.
Yeah.
Are you feeling like your training, your high volume training worked for you? Like, is there some sense of confidence? Like, even though the weather is crazier than I thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was nice to kind of, I think part of my anxiety was that as well, leading into the run, I think you just don't want to have a problem on day 1 or 2. Like you've had all this build up, all this kind of prep work. And if something went so wrong that the whole thing got cancelled in day 1 or day 2, that would be so like hard to handle. Whereas like, you know, I went in wanting to complete the challenge, but I also went in being like, I know I'll give this my best. However far I can get is great. But part of me never thought a lot of me never thought I'd get all the way around. A lot of me was kind of like, you know, similar to what we're saying about other ultra endurance athletes. I don't have the kind of like attitude of, oh, well, you know, you'll have to drag me off the road in a body bag. I was never in that kind of mindset of like, I'll die before I quit. I was just like, I will do my best and we'll see how far we can get. But I just wanted it to go well for the first 2 days.
Yeah.
So that you feel like you've done the right thing in the lead up. And it did on day 1, which was great. So then we all felt good, went to this campsite. And then that was where it became obvious, though, the kind of challenge we'd be facing on logistics wise is that it just takes a lot longer than you expect to do things like pick me up from wherever the finish point is, drive to a campsite or like somewhere where we can park the van, where there's like a shower, because there's not like loads of them. Then you've got 6 boys in like a small camper van, all trying to cook dinner on 2 gas stoves. My dinner is different from the other guys because I was having to consume so many calories, and then kind of do treatment. So Tommy would do, 30, 40 minutes physio treatment on my legs, but that you'd have to kind of move the bed around, and I'd be doing it on a bunk bed, which isn't very comfy, or on the main table, which again is just faff. So it's just like lots of small things, which just then take a lot of time to get done. And because it was day one, we were all still trying to find that rhythm. So that was frustrating, but we got it done. But the problem was, I went to bed that night, and we used this thing called Tailwind, which is like this great electrolyte drink that lots of runners use. And we had 2 different types, one that was caffeinated and one that wasn't. And at 6:30 p.m., I was given one, like a strong booster one that was caffeinated. And it was the equivalent of about 4 cups of coffee, 6:30 p.m. So I went into the night session feeling amazing, had a great run, and then did not go to sleep. And I was lying there at about 2:00 a.m. thinking, oh dear, I've just run 94 kilometers, got to repeat the same tomorrow, and I can't fall asleep. I literally, my brain is so awake. And it got to about 3 or 4 in the morning, and that's when you start to get frustrated at yourself, and you're like, come on, just please fall asleep. And I couldn't. So I probably drifted in and out for a while. I think I probably had 30 minutes of light sleep maximum, and got up at 4 and just said, guys, there's no point in me lying here. Let's just start running. And then if I need to fall asleep at lunch or whatever, I'll do that then. So then we just got up and went again. But that was a funny experience on the start of day 2, being like, I've not slept. I basically just lay down on a bed for 4 hours, getting annoyed, and now I'm going to start again. But oh well.
That is pretty funny.
Yeah, it was funny. It was a funny
quick start to day 2. Yeah, funny now, right?
But every day we had because ultra running as well, it's not like running a marathon in that you have to walk at parts, you have to eat, so you are moving, and you have to move more slowly in most cases because you're trying to protect your joints and stuff, and from the impact. And running quickly, it's like way more impact. So you to do a marathon was probably like 5 to 5.5 hours, and then we'd have a break for lunch and then do it again. So every day you're on the road for like 11 hours, which is quite a lot of time. And so we'd start, and then there would be other breaks or whatever. But you're on the road running for 11 hours, and then you have breaks throughout the day that are like maybe total 2.5 hours. So every day we'd start at like 6, aim to try and start 6, probably normally get close to 7, and then finish at 8 p.m. because it became too dark. But you just, that's a lot of time. So there's not a lot of time around doing other stuff. And that was
sorry.
hard.
So you have like 14-hour days, and you're moving 11 of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be about the sort of general structure with an hour at the 40 minutes to start, an hour at lunch, an hour at night. But we averaged, and then a few hours at night, because we'd finish at 8 p.m. and I'd probably normally go to bed at 11, like get into bed at 11, and then take at least an hour to shut my brain off, because you're still kind of wired in trying to think about the next day and whatever. And then we'd be up at 5. So, and there were some nights where I literally couldn't sleep. So I think over the whole trip, my average was 4.5 hours of sleep every night, which is not much, which is why, it's been 3 weeks now since we finished. I still feel like I'm, getting back all the sleep lost. Because it's like, I think 4.5 hours of sleeping for 3 weeks alone, it would make you feel pretty tired. And then doing, a double marathon every day in between that, it just compounds that amount of exhaustion.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
And then that's interesting. So on day 3, is it you get shin splints or some sort of ankle injury, right?
So the very end of day 2, I collapsed with a problem in my rec fem, just like the left leg, and that was like very end of the day. And so we just went to bed and thought, well, hopefully tomorrow. And I ran the first half marathon on day 3 and just couldn't move. And I literally lay on the massage bed Tommy had set up, and he was doing these tests on me, and we're like, we don't know what's going on. But Seb can't pick up his leg more than a few inches. And we had to get into the van, you had to step, and you had to go up step. And in order to get in the van, I literally had to take my 2 hands and lift up my left leg for me, because the muscle, which normally does that for you, was so inflamed basically So I couldn't do it without it being like seriously painful. Luckily, so I tried to carry on for a bit, and Tommy then drove up, and he'd been on the phone to one of his physio friends, a discussion, and found out that if he did a certain type of K taping and then wrapped it in a way, it would support it properly. And we couldn't believe how well that worked, just like compression tape. And it absolutely just solved the problem immediately. So that was great. I still couldn't lift my leg to get into the van. I still had to use my hands to get into the van, but I could lift it enough to run. So we were like, that's all I need to do. That's fine. So that started, that was day 3. And then the big ones that came up was there was this thing called tenosynovitis, which came up on day 4. And that is like funniest experience ever. Because basically I started getting the pain, and it's like on the front of your foot, there's this tendon that kind of connects your toes up to your shins. And it's how when you walk, you can kind of lift your toes up, basically. And mine just was just becoming so painful that any downhill just felt like this shooting pain, basically going right up through the bottom of my foot. And it was horrible. And we were trying lots of different things. I was taking paracetamol, painkillers, and it just kept recurring and was really bad. And so what we were doing was looking into it, and I showed Tommy this article about this guy called Ned Brockman, who's also an ultra runner, who had a similar thing. And they managed to find him these things called dictus bands, which are like what devices people with drop foot use to like help them pick up their foot. And I said, Tom, do you reckon we can find any dictus bands? And he went, no, mate, we're out in the middle of Iceland. Like, we're not going to find these very specialized medical devices. I went, okay, well, what do you reckon? And he went, well, I reckon I can build one. And the guys, Chris had some rubber bands in his camera equipment bag. And so with 2 balls of tape and 4 rubber bands, we essentially fashioned dictus bands. So what we do is you go take my trainer and tie the front of the laces, like nearest to the toes, tie 2 rubber bands on it, pull them as tight as possible, and then bandage the other end of the rubber band to my shin, so that there were these rubber bands that were kind of helping pull up.
They're almost like a tendon, right? Then like an elastic
artificial homemade tendon. So it was very annoying because it meant that as soon as I put on my trainers in the morning, I couldn't take them off till the very evening. Because normally at lunch, it's nice to take trainers off and let your feet breathe. Couldn't do that because we had all this stuff in place. So I had to have trainers on start of the day to the end of the day. And the bandages were really like solidly taped. So it was not comfortable around the bottom of my shin. And I should have shaved my legs before, because then at the end of the day, Tommy would have to rip off and that was painful. But it worked. Like, it still hurt. Don't get me wrong, on the tendon, but the tendons were now supported enough that they weren't going to like rupture, essentially. And I'd said to Tommy, the line for me is, if you think I'm about to do permanent damage to my body, stop. And he was like, if we have this device, the tendons will be inflamed, and so it will hurt, but they'll be supported enough that they won't rupture and become really problematic. So I was like, you know what? I can deal with the pain side of it. That's fine. And now that I know that it's not going to be really bad. And so that happened. It first came up with that device on day 5. So for 12 days, I was running with the rubber band tendons. Like, we did it the whole way to the rest of the run. And hilarious.
And a taped foot too, right? You're like a whole construction project.
And it literally, amazingly, near the end, like, had gotten a bit better. So who knew that, like, sometimes, you know, running more volume will actually help your body heal. And I couldn't believe it, but like near the end, we were still doing it because we were like, it's clearly working and clearly supporting your foot, so you may as well carry on. But that was a pretty crazy and some very creative physio work from Tommy. Credit to him for that. So that was the other one. And then I had, Achilles tendonitis. That's a classic, but that's fine. Big problems in my knees, where there were just different muscles on the inside of my thighs that were kind of tight. Because the thing is, you just don't have enough time to stretch and do everything properly. And we tried to get ice where we could, ice baths, or we tried to get like hot water baths where we could, but you don't get them very regularly. And so you just aren't recovering well. So everything becomes really tight and then pull on different muscles. And so my knees basically the whole time had some soreness, but I could kind of, no one's ever died from painful knees. So you can kind of get through it and compartmentalize that in your brain. And then because we were running on a main road the whole time, and there's no pavements or anything like that. I was like running on the roads the whole time, like turning my head to check for cars and all this. And then about day 7, I started getting the most insane twinges in my back anytime I turned my head. And that was just another one that's annoying. So we started going through rolls and rolls of K tape, which we literally, Tommy had his big bag of supplies. We ran out of K tape because in the morning it would take us like half an hour just to strap my body back together. And it was quite funny. Like near the end, I was just so covered in bandages and tape that you look at it, you go, I need to just lie down here. But you're literally being held together by tape and rubber bands and ridiculous little things. But our mentality was just try and fix it every day, and if it worked, keep doing it. And amazingly, that kept going.
Yeah, that's a funny photo finish. Picturing you, all sorts of tape and rubber bands, and
I mean, on the last 2 days, if you looked at my legs from the top of my thigh all the way down, the only part of my leg that was uncovered was like this little triangle over the front of my knee. The rest of the leg had some form of bandaging or something, or like compression socks or something on it. But it was
picturing just a science fair project, basically.
That's how it felt sometimes. I said that Tommy felt like this scientist doing tests on me, and I was like his kind of guinea pig that every day he'd push out into the world and say, off you go, do your best.
Yeah, totally.
But that's sort of kind of fun, really. And I think if you're doing one of these things, you need to be lucky enough to have someone like that who you have so complete faith in their knowledge that they know what they're doing, but you go, okay, I will carry on doing this because you're telling me that it's fine.
Yeah.
And that level of trust you really need for these kind of challenges, I think.
Despite all these injuries and the weather, are you able to keep pace with your original goal of 100K a day?
No, so not at all, which was kind of fine, and could have initially been kind of frustrating. But I didn't anticipate how much just all the factors of what was going on in the day would reduce the amount of time we had. So It was like, it wasn't necessarily that I couldn't have done the running. It's just I couldn't have done it in the 14 hours window, basically. And with the weather and daylight, we did a couple of sessions where we ran quite late into the evening and it was dark. Because if there was a day where I had been frustrated, I would say, guys, I'm not leaving until we've hit at least 75 kilometers. And so we do these sessions in the evening in the dark, but they became quite scary because you're still on this main highway, high vis, head torches, all this stuff. But that's when I could go into that place where I could deal with that. But obviously for the team, it's quite stressful because I'm obviously out on the road and it's not, it's harder to find me and stuff. We then do some where the van would drive along really slowly with the headlamps on. But then again, it's just scary because you don't know what cars might be flying past at 90 kilometers an hour. So we started to realize we just can't push into the night that much. And I'd originally thought that if we went to the 100K, we'd push really into the night. But just again, with the logistics and the amount of treatment my body was needing in the evening, so we kind of thought, okay, you know what, if we don't hit 100K, and I was fine about it. The record that we were going after was 27 days, and we finished it in 17, averaging about 80. And that just meant the whole thing was more manageable, and we weren't just spending hours. Because I think eventually it would have really started to get to my enjoyment of the whole thing if every night we were basically pushing for another 2 or 3 hours just in pure darkness. That then really starts to get to morale quite a lot because no one's really enjoying that anymore. And one of the most important things for me with this trip is just morale. If you're happy, you'll carry on.
And like you said, the safety factor. Imagine it's not crazy risk, but if you roll that dice 14 times,
exactly,
it could become a big risk. Yeah,
exactly. And because I'd broken my foot as well, slipping on the pavement earlier in the year. That was the first time I'd broken anything, and it really makes you kind of realize, oh, it's as simple as a small trip. And that put me off 2 months in a boot and set the whole trip back by 3 or 4 months. Yeah, and that a split second thing. And the road is like it's 2 lanes, one car going each way, and then most of the time it just drops off to the sides onto like rocky kind of expanses of land. And so I was like, okay, split second in the dark where I can't see where I'm going, and the whole thing's written off is not worth not worth it.
Yeah. What's it like when you're approaching like the last two or even last day?
Yeah, that was good. So it was like by that point, the last 3 days was the first time I actually thought, oh my God, we might finish, which was cool. So that was when we were actually like, wow, this is surreal. And we started feeling good. Everyone was in good spirits still. And like, I was obviously really excited. And that's when my mum and sister and dad flew out and saw us. And like that, you know, was amazing because they're so supportive. And obviously they wanted to be there the whole time. But I'd said like, look, I need to just be with the team. But I was like so emotional because, you know, Libs is such an inspiring person. Like she's had battles her whole life through having like brain tumors in a baby, and then the long-term side effects of having sort of brain surgery in your first year of your life. You know, there's always challenges, and yet she's still always bubbly and excitable and happy. And so that's like one of the things which kind of keeps me in that mindset of always be happy. And so to see her, and she came and actually ran like, you know, she ran 14K on the road with me, which was really nice.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was really sweet. And, you know, that it just felt like we were coming home then, because it's like parents there, and Chris and Cameron, his mum came out as well. And then as we were running into Reykjavik, you know, the whole time we just been this like group of mates in a van having a funny time. And then we noticed as we were coming in, there were like news cameras and stuff. And you kind of think, wow, you feel so disconnected from the world when you're doing something like this. Like it's just the six of us. And even when we'd had like the BBC News articles written, it just all felt just kind of funny. Like we were still just having a great time. We were super grateful. But then when you're coming in and seeing the fact that, you know, the news have come out, you go like, whoa, this is nuts. Like we've connected with people, I guess. And that's really cool. So yeah, it was pretty surreal. And I just could not process it at the time. I was literally just like doing every day, still trying to stay on the task and get the mileage in. And, you know, as I was coming up to the end, I was just being like, I still struggle to kind of know how to put it into words, but it's like it was an obsession for over a year. And the whole time it was so terrifying, the prospect of it, that when you actually get there and start to think about what you've done, it's so like, whoa, it's all, you just can't even believe it yourself, really. And I still can't sometimes, even now. So it felt amazing. And I feel so happy with how it all went, and lucky that we had good weather on days. And like Iceland as a place scenically is just insane. Like, you know, even though the elevation and stuff is ridiculous, you've got these fjords. And so I was just reflecting on the whole thing the whole time, being like, wow, this is awesome. And I'm so lucky that I kind of got to take it on and give it a go.
That's so cool. What's the actual finish line like? With the
we chose the finish line. So we chose. So there's this big church in the middle of Reykjavik, which was about 8 kilometers away from the road. So we basically did an extra 16 kilometer at the start, at the end. We didn't need to do, but I'd gone out to Reykjavik in May and like recce'd, but like did a kind of tether trip, and that church, I just knew that was where I had to finish, because it's like this center of the city.
Yeah.
It's the place that I had in my mind, and I envisioned walking up, and we started at the church, and I was like, started touching the church, ran down the main street, looked back at it and went, right, I'm going to make it back here. I'm going to make it back here. And so the whole time I just visioned walking back up and up that long kind of strip in the center and touching the church. So yeah, that was like just a really, really cool moment, and just sort of started crying. So I don't really know what to do with myself. But it's just when you've been building towards something for so long, and it's been occupying most of your waking thoughts for over a year, that then to have it done, is so, indescribably awesome and exciting, because, you know, everything's paid off and it's great.
Congratulations, man. It's such a cool accomplishment.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Did you talk about the charity that you worked with to help that you're sponsoring the whole time?
Of course, yeah. Thanks for bringing them up. So I work for Children with Cancer UK, and I got into this charity because of Libby's story and how grateful I am that she's recovered and is great. But basically, there's lots of different things going on in the world of cancer research and childhood cancer. But childhood cancer is often not understood nearly as well as cancer in adults, and how much that they are quite different in, one, how it manifests in a child, but then two, in how that we need to treat them. And, you know, adults are fully developed bodies, and so can go through quite intense treatment sometimes to deal with cancer, whereas children are going through development. And so you want to have treatment that is kinder to the way that their body is growing. Otherwise, they end up with lifelong side effects, which then completely diminish their quality of life. And of course, saving someone's life is the primary goal. But the secondary goal is then saving their life so that they can then have a good life afterwards and live properly and be independent and not be completely constrained by having to like constantly take different treatments just to carry on living. And so what we do at the charity is invest in these alternative and different types of treatments, and we fund millions every year going towards childhood cancer research, specifically childhood cancer that's different from adult treatments. And so that's the one area of research, really important. It doesn't get enough money from the government. And then secondly, into welfare and like looking after families and kids as they go, because research obviously is investing in things which will have impact in maybe 10 or 20 years time. It's quite a long process to get a drug into kind of circulation, as it should be. But then we want to support families and children going through cancer treatment now and doing different things like having a retreat where they can go and just sort of spend time away from the different things, or if it be, trips out, day trips, financial support, all these different things which people, everyone knows childhood cancer exists, but if most of the time a family will not fully understand all about it, and then it will just suddenly hit you and it takes you out, and it's one of the most devastating things that can happen to a parent. And so we want to be there so that people can come and say, this just happened to me, my child has cancer, what do I do? And be there for those families. And so that's why for me, the money that we raise to go into research is massively important. But then the second thing is important is just getting people to, read about it and learn about it and try and feel like they're not scared to talk about childhood cancer, because it's 1 in 10 families in the UK, 10 families every day in the UK find out that their child had cancer. And that's just the UK. So in America or whatever, it's going to be bigger. But that's a lot of people who every day will have that moment of like soul crushing realization and fear. And if more people kind of can say, oh yeah, I know about this charity, why don't you go see this charity? Then it gets people out there and it gets people coming together and supporting each other, which that if is just as amazing if that's what we can do.
Yeah, what a great charity to partner with on that trip.
Feel really, really lucky, and they've been so insanely supportive and brilliant. And when I came back, we had a nice little sort of welcome back party, and that's been really exciting. So also thank you to you, because like the more people that I can sort of go and talk to about it is really wicked and exciting. And so the fundraiser is still open for as many people to want to come and find out about the trip or the run, or also donate to the cause. That's still really available, and that's great.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll link all that below too.
Thanks.
What were the people of Iceland like? Were they receptive? Did you meet a lot of locals?
Yeah, they were great. I mean, Icelandic people are so lovely in the most. They've got the way I describe it is they have the most sort of honest generosity ever, because I'm quite an extroverted person, and you often meet people who are really kind of, whereas I find Icelandic people are just very calm, very quiet, but then without looking for any sort of praise or reciprocation, just are generous. And that was so lovely. And we met these friends when I'd gone out in May, and then they were there doing literally everything for us, sending us these weather updates every day and giving us advice about the entire island. George, trip manager, literally went around this massive map with our friend Erden, and he pointed out every single thing he knew about the country, so that George could have a little annotation on his map. So we knew about everywhere, which was like so useful. And then we had, what was cool is we had people like truckers or whatever who obviously spend a lot of time on the road coming up to the boys at gas stations and saying, hey, are you the team, the guy running around? Because I think to them, it was just nuts. They were like, obviously know this massive highway that goes down the island. And as much as everyone was supportive, no one really knew why we wanted to do it. So that was really fun, that they were always just so intrigued by us group of like, clearly just young and slightly naive guys from the UK, but I think they loved it. So that was really
I think you have to be both of those to do that trip.
Yeah, probably. About the balance.
Hey, will you humor me for a quick speed round questions?
Yeah, hit me.
What's the best meal after a long run?
Ooh, fish and chips, probably for me.
Oh, very British.
So British, and it's just nostalgic. And if you've been on like an 100K, you feel quite. I always feel not sad, but slightly delicate at the end, because you just kind of, it's a lot of emotional stuff going around in your body. And so I just want to have something that I can sit down with a massive plate of food and feel comfort.
Yeah. Piece of running gear you can't live without.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, okay, so I've always been a massive advocate of, to run, you don't need loads of kit. So and it sometimes makes me sad when people feel like the bar to entry for running is too high for them, because I'm like, no, you can run with nothing, you know.
Yeah.
So that first and foremost is like what I really stand by. However, headphones for me are massive.
True.
Because I always say to people, if you don't enjoy the running, just pretend you're dancing. So put on your music that you can dance to. And I've literally been known to be running down the road and also doing a little dance. And one of my favorite videos that we put out in Iceland was a day where I said, guys, I don't want, normally we do kind of informative things about Iceland or the trip or whatever. And I said, today I just want a video where all we do is dance. And there's us dancing along to Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. And I was like, that is cool. So headphones,
that's awesome.
Probably the main one.
Yeah, I get that. When people start shadow boxing while they run.
Yeah. He's picturing himself somewhere else.
Exactly. And then if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Steven Pinker is an American psychologist, and I studied psychology at university, and his work recently, I think he's an amazing guy, but he writes all about why life is brilliant despite all the kind of different problems in the world. And there's so many problems going on, and right now especially there's so many problems, but he wrote a book called Enlightenment Now, which is where he basically points to all the different scientific data that suggests that life right now is amazing. And why, even though the news is always pointing at the bad, we can also focus on the good. And I read that and was just so blown away by that. And obviously he's an incredibly intelligent man as well. But I was so blown away by that mentality that I was like, wow, dinner would be wonderful with that guy.
Yeah, just feel super inspired and hopeful.
Super inspired, it's super interesting, and yeah, that would just be great.
And then the last question, what's the best way for people to support you and your charity?
Yeah, support me in charity. So my Instagram is called Yes Seb Key, all one word, Yes Seb Key. So head over to the Instagram, watch the videos. I'm so proud of my team and the videos they made. So watching those and getting involved in the run, and then the link there goes to the fundraising page where you can sort of donate and learn more about the charity and the work we do. And that's, for me, with getting involved with charity, donating is one thing, of course. But then go out and learn about childhood cancer. There's some amazing information on Children with Cancer UK's website, but lots of other websites as well, about the 12 different types of cancer, how to talk to someone if they're going through treatment. And that sort of just personal learning makes a massive difference, because inevitably it will come up at some point in your life. And if you know how to deal with it and support someone in the right way, it's so awesome and important to do. So that would be, I'd say it would be great. And thank you to everyone that does do that.
Yeah, totally. And thank you for all the time. I appreciate it. It's fun hearing about this really cool trip.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. It's been really fun to go over it all with you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much to Sebastian for joining. Had a great conversation with you. And thank you for listening. Be sure to hit like, follow, subscribe, and all the other buttons so you stay tuned for the next episode.